everyone. It is October 5th, 2021, just 4 weeks away from the November 2nd local elections. And these last few weeks, we've had a series of conversations with some of the people running for local office. And today we have our second in our series of discussions with the Colchester First Selectman, Mary Bylone. Hi, Mary. Good to see you again today.
Hi there, Sheila. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. So now you've got 4 weeks away. And I just want to start out by talking about the idea of campaigning. It's months and weeks in the planning, and then you only got 2 years once you get elected, and then the campaign almost starts almost immediately when you start your term. So tell me, how has the campaign been for you this time?
Well, I mean, we've been out greeting with the people, doing, voter contact with phone calls and door knocking and holding some community conversations at different locations, out and about, really, the farmers market, different businesses. And the feedback has been really, really positive. People are very appreciative of the hard work that we've done, and certainly acknowledge the challenges that the global pandemic presented to being able to get things done and move things forward. So that part's been good. It is exhausting. There's no doubt about it. There's never enough hours in the day, just to answer the emails and the texts and the private messages and everything. That's been pretty challenging. But I like getting out with the people. Honestly, I've been doing that since I was elected. So campaigning isn't much different. Just a little bit more focused.
Right, because in your term, more than I think any other first selectman we've had, you use social media, Facebook Live, conversations with people, walking the town, so that you're really active. And this campaign is almost an extension of the work that you're doing almost every day. But tell me, I know that it's a good sign that you're getting good feedback from personal interaction with people in their homes, on the streets. But of course, we also have a social media in the world today that is almost infected by some bad will, not goodwill between candidates and on campaigns. How are you feeling about that? And how is it? I hope it's not deterring people like you from doing public service, because they get frustrated with the anger and with the harassment and some of the untrue things that are being passed around.
So that's a really great point, Sheila, that you make. And so this is what I would say. I mean, I'm a huge Facebook person. I've been doing Facebook for a number of years, and I enjoy a lot of Facebook. I'm in contact with nursing colleagues across the country, friends I went to high school with, friends from when I lived in New Jersey, people I would have definitely lost touch with if it hadn't been for Facebook. So I think I always try to see a lot of the positive. In addition, I was able to use Facebook in a very productive way during COVID to be able to push out information, find out what people were concerned about, and answer those questions in real time. So from that perspective, I think there's so many positive things about social media. I think the part that bothers me the most about what's happened really around the political side of things isn't about people disagreeing, because I think that when we have more than one perspective presented about an idea, a topic, a project or whatever, I think it's a richer conversation. I don't really like groupthink, never have. But the part that really is upsetting to me is the amount of mistruths that are put out there with no consequence. And, I there for a while, I thought, well, I'd see a post about something that was an outright, not factual statement. And I'd say, okay, so there's 15 people or 10 people or maybe 5 people that have commented on it. No big deal, right? But what I learned over time, especially from the door knocking and speaking to people, is that there's hundreds of people that are reading that. And so the idea that people can put out something that's absolutely untrue, and the vicious personal attacks, and that there are people that are reading it, and if that's the only side of the story they get, they do draw some conclusions. So recently we have begun just really putting the positive factual information out there and trying not to go down the rabbit hole with some of the negativity and just really talk about, what is it we're doing? What do we stand for? What do we want to do? What are the accomplishments that have been had? And we're finding a very rich conversation and people who are eager to discuss things that are positive and factual.
Okay, well, let's hope that the positive spin will outweigh the negativity. Sadly, I've read books and articles about politics and campaigning that says you've got to make sure that you get on top of the negativity right away and answer it. I think you're doing that. I hope you're doing that. And I hope that you don't get discouraged and that you keep having that positive attitude toward people's involvement in the government, which brings to another question. We had the referendum in Colchester, and finally the budget passed for the third time. And there's not going to be any major tax increases. But it brings a question again of your terrific outreach and your contact with the public and informing them on what's happening. But why is it that so few people actually vote in these local elections when the stuff that goes on in their everyday lives is dependent on the ordinances and the policies and the things that happen with their first selectman, with their board of education, their board of finance? Can you explain that? Do you have any views on that?
Well, I mean, in the door knocking, we have certainly run into people who say, I don't vote in municipal elections. I only vote in the presidential election. And and that kind of opens the door to have a conversation about how important municipal government is in your day-to-day life and that they really should engage. Some people are very receptive to that. Other people are really, thank you, but I'll vote for the president. I do think it's unfortunate because I live every day seeing the direct impact that municipal government has on the residents of this community. So I value it. And I ask myself, what could we do more to get people out and voting? And I think we just have to find ways to help them understand and appreciate how it does connect to them. In addition, I don't know that we always do the best job of communicating that there is actually an election. On the day of the budget referendum, for example, there were people that were calling, voters and saying, hey, make sure you come out today and vote for the budget. And they told me they had people who said, there's a budget vote today. And it was in the paper and it was on Facebook and the website and the e-news. And so I asked somebody the other day who said they didn't know about something. I said, what's your suggestion for how we can push this information out better? And they said, I don't know. I guess you just got to spoon feed it to me. So I don't know what that looks like for each person. I think, taking a multi-pronged approach to getting information out is important. But we just seem to miss some people, with just making sure that they know what's going on. But the engagement is frustrating. Even in this last budget referendum, there were still over 600 people who voted no for a 0% increase. That was a little hard to understand. So I just think there's just more work we need to do, getting out, connecting with the voters and making sure we understand and appreciate the issues that are important to them.
Right. So that brings to mind the next thrust of my questions and discussion with you. The connection that people feel to their community. So you want Colchester people to not feel it's just a suburb where they just come home to sleep. I've read articles about how the lack of local newspapers and local journalism hurts democracy because everybody's watching the evening news and watching Facebook. We have the River East in Colchester, but it's not just all about Colchester. It covers many other towns. So that's a lack too. So having said all of that, how do you get your people in Colchester to feel part of the community? And we're going to talk about the character of Colchester, what you envision for it to be like as a community, and then work up into the economic development, tourism issues, and then the American Rescue Plan and how that can help get good stuff to Colchester. So talk first about the character of the town as you see it and the idea of planning for the future, which I know you think is important also.
Right. So, sometimes I'll have people that are, they'll make comments about how come we don't have this big box store, or how come we don't have this chain of restaurants. We just recently opened up another auto parts store, which people just can't even imagine that we would need one more auto parts store in town. But the thing is, I also get people who complain about the smells of farms and the noise that the chickens make when the roosters crow in the morning and things like that. And so I try to step back and say, to your point, what is the history of our town? What is Colchester? And, we really are an agricultural and historic community. And we are somewhat rural, right? We have 49 square miles. But we have a lot of open space and undeveloped parts of our community. And I know why I chose to come here. I picked Colchester because I was excited about the rural nature, the opportunities for outdoor activities, the agriculture, and the historic culture of the town that it was preserved in some ways. So as far as the vision goes, we've been looking for ways that we can increase some development without, impacting our center of town, or town center, as many of us call it. And so we have some areas on the outskirts of town that would make really great small manufacturing opportunities. And so we need to look at how can we make it easier for businesses to come in and use those opportunities, because Upton Road, which is right now pretty much our only, manufacturing or real, manufacturing area, is pretty much tapped out. There are no lots left in there to be sold. And so if we want to attract some additional businesses, we have to start looking at infrastructure improvements to some of those outreach areas along like Route 11 and also down off of Route 2 that don't really have amenities that businesses want to see, like, for example, water and sewer and electric that's convenient and less costly for them.
So how does that work, economic development? Tell us the relationship between what you do as the first selectman and trying to encourage new businesses to come into town. Is there an economic development commission? What do they do? Is there a zoning commission that has some say over what kinds of businesses can come and where they can set up in Colchester? How does all of that work together? Explain that.
Sure. So a number of years ago, there was a plan that was put together, and zoning maps were created. And so there are zoning regulations that govern what type of structures or business or activity can happen in certain places in town. So town central, for example, town center, that's definitely an area where we can have businesses. We could have mixed use business, like where you have a retail on the bottom and an apartment on the top. There are some areas, though, that are not zoned for business whatsoever. And then there are other areas that are more open to agriculture, zoned for agriculture. Those regulations really haven't changed much, or I should say the zoning map hasn't changed much since it was put in place a number of years ago. It does still seem to be appropriate for the most part for what the people say they want in the community. So there hasn't been a lot of work around changing that. But there are regulations in each one of those zones as to what's appropriate to be built there. And that involves signage, traffic flow, drive-throughs. For example, we just recently had, before the P&Z committee, the people that own Jack Chevrolet building, that old building that is unoccupied in the center of town, they were trying to get a variance to have a drive-through there. And planning and zoning did not pass that. So that's an example of there wasn't anything there that would allow that. They had a developer that was interested in having that opportunity. P&Z looked at it and determined that it would not be a good idea. So that was turned down. So that's kind of how things are regulated. Some things that we've done to encourage development, we are trying to take some of the red tape out of the zoning rules to speed things up. So certain things under a certain amount of money or certain different types of construction no longer need to go to a full P&Z board review. There is an economic development commission, and they do things like handle working with new businesses around tax abatements, trying to help them to figure out ways that they can save money up front when usually businesses have the least amount of money because everything is putting money out to build and construct, and they don't have revenue coming in. So the EDC works with them, as well as we've joined an organization called Sector, which is very business focused, and they help to bring interested parties to our community. They know what our inventory of open spaces are. In other words, buildings that are not occupied currently. And they have developers that come to them or businesses saying, I'm looking for 1,800 square feet. I want to be in a retail strip area. I need access to the highway, etc. And Sector will send those people down to meet with our town planner, and oftentimes I meet with those people. So that's just some of the work that's being done to encourage businesses to come into town. And I will say this, last year, we had a record 87 new businesses that started. Now, I want to just, kind of put that in perspective. At the worst part of the pandemic in Colchester, we had a record 87 new businesses. This year, we already have 82 new businesses just to date at the end of October. So we're probably going to break that record again. So some people think about the global pandemic and how it's, really suppressed or, eliminated a lot of opportunities. That's not what we've seen in Colchester. So very excited about that because that shows growth and investment in our community. And also, I think it speaks to the fact that people believe in Colchester and what we're doing and that we're on the right path and they want to be part of it. And so to locate their business here in Colchester, it says a lot, I think.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you, and you've kind of started the answer, that during the pandemic, because the last 2 years you've concentrated with your leadership on getting the town through the pandemic, or still trying to hopefully finishing up the pandemic. That would be terrific. But notwithstanding that, you were able to work on economic development and bring businesses to town. So just kind of summarize, what do you think the accomplishments were in the field of economic development during the first term you have, and what's on tap that you hope to get accomplished in the next 2 years and that? And tell us, when you say 87 businesses, what kinds of businesses were they?
Sure. So in the 87 businesses, it runs the full gamut, from a new restaurant like Lily's that opened up where Cafe Manja was, to an auto parts store, to Odds and Bones, which was a food truck, ended up being able to put themselves in a permanent location where Nunu's had been. We had a karate studio that opened up. We had a new hairdresser, new nail salon. We had the tattoo parlor that's opened up, Gifts on the Green, which is a nice little retail store that sells a variety of local products, locally made products. Green Glass, which is a CBD store. There's been, it runs the full spectrum of businesses. But, the focus during these last 2 years has really, since COVID, which is pretty much the last 2 years, has been on keeping our current businesses open and being successful and safe. And safe not just for their customers, but also for their staff. So we worked individually with a lot of the businesses in town, especially restaurants, hairdressers, nail salons, retail, to be able to stay open and make it safe for them and for their customers. So outdoor dining, drive-through opportunities, helping them to design the flow of traffic within their store so that they would, not have congestion and things like that. So that's what we've done over, the last 2 years to help with the success. Moving forward, I'd like to see a shift back to an original goal that I had, and that is to bring in some small to medium-sized manufacturing into our community. We have a phenomenal program at our Bacon Academy, which is a comprehensive high school that also has an unbelievable manufacturing track. They've partnered with Goodwin University, where they're able to offer college credits to high school students. So they'll graduate with college credits already in manufacturing, and they're getting internships at Electric Boat and Pratt Whitney and Sikorsky, as well as internships in our own community with places like Incord and Alpha Q, manufacturers that are right here located in Colchester. So that's really, going to be my focus in my next term, is trying to bring in some of these small to medium manufacturing businesses to add growth to our grand list, and also to bring, make Colchester a destination for people to work, and they eat lunch here and they put gas in their car and then they go home.
Right. So I think you make a really good point, how important it is to have the coordination between the schools and the employers, the manufacturers and the small businesses that can then work with the schools to give the students the skills they need to go into the marketplace, especially if the people who are not going on to liberal arts colleges. So that's a great program and really, really important. So getting back to economic development and trying to make the town to look at it the way you would like to see it in the future. What about the idea of tourism and marketing the town? When I came to Colchester many years ago, it was famous for its bakery and its egg farms. I couldn't go visiting anyone outside of Colchester without bringing some bread and some eggs. And we had very historic families from World War I, World War II, Holocaust survivors, a very, very rich history. Why don't we do more with that and make Colchester more of a kind of a destination? What's going on with that idea?
Yeah, so Sheila, that is actually one of the things that I recognized when I was thinking about running the first time, that it was a missed opportunity for our community. It was one of those things I kept saying that, Colchester can do better than this. And there's never been any money budgeted for economic development. Let me just clarify. There hasn't been any money in the last several years, okay? 2 or 3 terms worth of first selectments, right? I think that sends a strong message that it hasn't been given the importance that it really needs to be. And so we have the early talks right now are to develop an agricultural kind of marketing campaign. We have a number of farms in our community. About 2 months ago, the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Beisowitz, came to visit. And she had said to me, I want to come down, I want to do a farm tour. And she said, I want to see 4 different industries of farming, but they need to be about 5 or 6 minutes apart from each other. Now, not a lot of communities could have done this, but we did. So we took the Lieutenant Governor, we took her to Priam Winery, we took her to Savitsky's Vegetable Farm, we took her to Cato Corner Cheese, and we took her to Hop Culture Brewery. And she was blown away by what she saw. First of all, most of those are women-owned businesses, so that really, got her attention. But the other thing too is that it represented 4 completely different types of farming that we have here in our community. But we also have meat raising farms. We have tree farms. We have nurseries. I mean, we have a lot going on related to agriculture. So I met with the Agriculture Commission at their last meeting, and we talked about getting together a directory of all the farms. We have a small thing that we had done, a little pamphlet, really doesn't do justice to all the farms. But looking at, how can we build something on the website, on the town's website, to promote the farming, and then actually having some events. Maybe they spur off of the farmers market that's, on Sundays during the mostly summer and early fall months. But that seems like a good place to start. And those the farmers are eager to become involved in this, highlighting, milk and eggs and meat and vegetables and pumpkins and, trees, cheese and wine and beer. I mean, that sounds like a pretty complete menu to me. So we're excited to get started on that. That's really in the early parts, but I think we can take that same idea and move it over to some other things.
Okay. Before we move on to another subject, do you have any other final thoughts on economic development and having Colchester grow into the future, but in the right way, in a planned way?
I think one important part is that people should stop to think for a minute that economic development, anytime we talk about one particular topic in isolation, we lose the beauty and the power of the collective impact that our community can have on any one of those groups. And so when we take care of our fields, for example, when we take care of our seniors, when we take care of our young families with our playgrounds and things like that, when we have open recreation opportunities for people to hike and enjoy our parks and our lakes, all of that feeds into economic development, because what happens in that is, yes, we get people to move into the community. That's one aspect. But what we also want to do is we want to be able to attract people to come here and make, as you said, Colchester a destination for the day. So giving them opportunities to be able to come in, have a good time, and at the same time spend their money in our businesses to help them to thrive. And then maybe at some point, if they're thinking about someplace to relocate, they'll think about Colchester and choose it. And again, I don't want to not mention our schools, because we have a phenomenal reputation for our schools. And that is what brings people to actually take up residence often in our community. So economic development really has a whole bunch of different pieces that feed into it. And I don't want to lose sight of that, that it's important to focus on all those areas, and that will provide us with economic development.
Okay. So I think in the past you've gotten some grants for economic development. You can talk about that, and that will lead us into the big grants that I know is an issue in the campaign, the American Rescue Fund plan, and the grant of almost $5 million that Colchester will be receiving to be used towards civic projects. So why don't you talk about that? What is your vision for that, and how is that going to be implemented?
Right. So just quickly, we did get a grant for the green a number of years ago, and it was never acted on. But I brought that before the Board of Selectmen to help step that up, and we will be beginning construction probably during the winter months on the plan for that. That was a $400,000 grant that we got from the government. We had the grant for the Paper Mill Bridge, and some monies available for the cleanup at the Norton Park. So that will be underway soon. We're doing some demolition of the house that's out there. And then there's a sidewalk grant that we got for Lebanon Avenue, which will help to connect Northwoods, all the way from Northwoods all the way down into the center of town, which will be great because a lot of those people like to ride their bikes or walk. And that will enable them to safely be able to get down into town, drugstore, liquor store, grocery store, right, buy a gift and have a beer, right?
Tell people about what Norton Park is. Where is it, and what are the plans for it?
Sure. Norton Park is actually possible through a gracious donation from a family in town, and it will be somewhat of a passive recreation area with some historic pieces there. It was a paper mill that has since been demolished, went into disrepair and was torn down. And so that area there will have benches, and there'll be some pieces that were part of that mill that will be on display there. There'll be a pavilion. There's the river there, the Jeremy River. There's great fishing in that river there. It's not huge, but the fishing is incredible. So that is on Route 149. So if you get off exit 16 on Route 2, that will take you there.
Right, great. All right, so let's talk about the American Rescue Plan funds that Colchester will be receiving. What is your vision for how they are to be used?
Yes, I'm very excited about that. We received $4.68 million on the town side alone. The Board of Ed got another almost $4 million, and our monies are separate. And so what we did was I put together a committee of stakeholders in our community that represent different areas, business, families, civic leaders, real estate, things like that. And they were appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and they have had now 3 meetings. I am a member of the board as well as a couple other elected officials. And basically, right now they're just getting the process nailed down. But what will happen is an individual, a group, an organization, or a department manager at Town Hall can put forth a project that they would like to see funded by what we call ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. So ARPA funds. And this committee will be charged with reviewing and screening, and then sending forward their recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, who will make the ultimate decision as to which projects will be funded. We have half of that cash already in the bank. So soon as we get the process done, which should just take another week or so, we'll be able to start accepting applications for projects. One area that I know is going to get some attention is the playground area and our sports fields, because they desperately need some revamping. And this money is going to give us the opportunity to do some things that we can't do in our operational budget, especially when there's always this goal to, cut things from it. So it will give us a chance to do some real improvements and investment in our community with money that we could have never raised ourselves. So I'm very excited about it. And I'm excited about the process because the recommendations to the Board of Selectmen will be made by taxpayers based on what they know to be the priorities of their neighbors and themselves.
Yeah. Are there some areas though that you wish would go, with the ARPA funds would go to, even though you're happy with the process, which brings the public into the act? Do you have some wish lists on your own about what the funds could be used for?
Oh, I could spend way more than $4.68 million all by myself. I mean, some of the things that I think I'm going to bring forward, because I don't expect that others will, have to do with, for example, we've had really good response from the community with the Zoom meetings that we've been holding. But we would like to get back to meeting in person. But people have told us that the convenience of being able to join from home, right, or being able to watch them afterwards has really helped them to understand more about what's going on in our community. So I would like to see us, set up a real, real equipment to be able to do that in a quality way, so we can continue, even when we move to in-person meetings, continue to have people be able to engage and, through citizens' comments, make, recommendations for the board to consider. I just think it increases the dialogue. So that's one example. I mean, I think the other ideas that I have are going to come in from other people, the playground, the rec fields. I think you're going to see some things around some infrastructure, maybe some signage downtown along your idea of how do we market, how do we brand Colchester so other people, when they drive down the road, they'll know where they are. Are there some things we could do to help some businesses with outdoor seating areas? I don't know if you've been to Manchester, but they've done a lot with streetscaping to make it more convenient and more appealing to have outdoor areas for people to eat, which you would attract people into town. So those are just some ideas real quick.
Okay, great. The idea of marketing Colchester brings to my mind my dear friend of many years ago, a novelist, a wonderful writer, Antonia Van Loon. She created the sign Colchester, where tradition meets tomorrow. And you see that sign on two locations, off of Route 2 coming from Hartford, and then off of 85 coming from New London. You know those signs?
Yes, I do. They were made by the Bacon Academy students.
There you go.
Program.
And so so we see those two signs, but what about incorporating that phrase into a lot more of Colchester's marketing, publicity, etc.?
It should be that when you drive down the street, you're in Colchester. And we really don't have an organized theme for even what buildings should look like. There's a lot of just one-off buildings that have been built over time. Nothing matches anything. So it's time for us to take a look at that and figure out, what do we want the buildings to look like? What do we want downtown to look like? And as we start to move forward, certainly within the historic district, we want to stay historic. But in those areas like Lebanon Avenue, where we're going to be placing the senior center, making sure that the other buildings that are in that area share a general theme. So there's a feel that you have that looks organized and planned and thought out. And we don't really have that right now. And that would include the use of a tagline, where tradition meets tomorrow, and a logo that's not just the seal of the town. Which is
what's the entity that's going to be working on that? Is that the Economic Development Commission? Is that a separate committee that you'll organize? How will that work?
Well, we've talked about it going to economic development. Matt Bordeaux, the town planner, and I have had a lot of discussion about this. He's from Manchester, so he appreciates how it can be done. And so I think it's most likely, we don't want to just keep creating commissions. We just made 2. But what we want to do is find work for the commissions that we already have. And the EDC seems to be the logical place. Of course, we want to involve the Historic Commission as well, Historic District Commission, because we do not want to lose that heritage that we have, that they've done a really good job of protecting. And we just want to make sure that it's an enhancement and not an evolution, so to speak.
Right. Okay, so at our next session in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about the senior center. We'll talk about recreation, open spaces. We'll talk about public safety, I think I mentioned. But so let's finish up today by talking about the campaign. You've got some events coming up. We want people to be knowledgeable about where you're going to be speaking, where you're going to be going, how they can contact you, and so forth. So what's coming up for the campaign?
So that's a great question off the top of my head. I might not do a good job of that, but I can tell you tonight is the Colchester Business Association Meet the Candidates Night. The AARP is having a Meet the Candidates by Zoom. I want to say that's next Tuesday. I am guessing a little bit. If they check the website, if they check my campaign website, they will find all that information on the Facebook pages. I'm also doing Friday, I am at Oz and Bones at dinner time with a couple of the other candidates. We're going to have dinner and, have open conversation. Last weekend, I was at Hop Culture and Priam Winery. So we're moving around quite a bit now because we're down 28 days, Sheila. This time, 4 weeks from now, the election will almost be over. So we're trying to, get out there and meet as many people as we can so we can hear what's really important to them.
Right. It's exactly 4 weeks from today. And so just tell us your website, if any phone numbers. The campaign headquarters, tell us where that is. Anybody can waltz in there and pick up information. And if they want to help, they can make some phone calls, write some postcards. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So the campaign headquarters is located directly across from the Polish Club, next to the Christian store in that strip area of stores there. We're on the second floor. And we man it most nights. And then on the weekends during the day, we're there because we have people going out door knocking and phone calling. The website is www.marybylone.com. And you can also reach me by email at mary@marybylone.com or marybylone@gmail.com. Or you call my cell phone. My personal cell phone is 860-908-2909. You can text me, send me a call. You can get me on Facebook. I get back to everybody. Sometimes it takes me a couple days, but I'm very responsive and I look forward to hearing any ideas or comments that anybody has out there.
Okay, great. So I'm going to give you one last chance. Any final thoughts before we end this session?
I think the most important thing people can do is vote. And they should cast their vote by getting educated on the candidates and know what's important to them and find out how the candidates stand on those issues. And look for the facts because there's just so many unfactual miscommunication, misinformation that's out there. Facebook is good for a lot of things. One of the things that it's bad for is getting out a lot of information that's not accurate. So I'd say if you see something out there, check it out in person, call and talk to the person.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary Bylone, candidate for First Selectman Colchester. 4 weeks from now, November 2nd. We'll see you all next time on Talkback. Bye. Bye, Mary.
Bye now, everyone.